Welcome to an episode of Chat Sports Talk. I hope that you've had a wonderful Christmas time, spent time with friends and family, had wonderful food, enjoyed a few drinks, got some wonderful gifts that you probably wanted, maybe gifts that you needed, and maybe a few that you didn't want. But now we got that time frame behind us. Now we're starting to head towards the new year, and 2025 definitely going to have some interesting takes coming. But also concludes the first batch of Bowl Mania games from my Bowl Mania 1 video. That is now complete. I actually went 7-7, or if you add the 2 extra games in there, 8-8. So I started off strong, just kind of stumbled along through some of the other games. And so far with Bowl Mania 2, I'm already 2-1, 1 day down. So we'll see what happens because it's 2 other full slate of games being out there. But Bowl Mania 3 is going to start on the 30th of December since there's going to be no NFL that day. They're like, you know what, let's just throw in a college football game. Why not? And we'll go to Nashville, Tennessee for the Music City Bowl between the 8-4 Iowa Hawkeyes and the 9-3, 19th ranked Missouri Tigers. Now, both of these clubs really had a decent run through the season. Mizzou kind of stumbled here and there towards the end of the year. But all in all, both of them had decent seasons. Heading to this game. McNamara, not really a focal point for that Iowa's offense. Iowa's offense is kind of hit and miss in terms of a lot of things. They're best known for their defenses. And Mizzou has a hard time taking on very good defenses. So there's going to be a big thing for Cook to see if he can try to find more touchdowns, because he doesn't throw a lot of touchdown passes. So it's going to be hard to see if he's able to succeed in that aspect. But Johnson's going to be a key factor for the Hawkeyes in running attack if he continues to just ground and pound and dictate the game. This is where the Iowa's offense is with the running game. And Mizzou needs to be able to attack that, shut that down, to be able to do that so they can have the edge in this game. Analytically, Mizzou is favored at 53%. They also have a 1.5 point spread. I do think it's going to be a close game between these two, just because how these teams are kind of structured. Iowa's defense will keep the game close. If Mizzou can't stop the rushing attack of the Hawkeyes, it's going to spell a lot of trouble for Mizzou. And if Mizzou can't try to find ways to work around the defense of the Hawkeyes, because they're ball hawks. But I do think Mizzou will be able to hold on and leave Nashville winning the Music City Bowl. Now we head over to Tampa on the 31st, New Year's Eve, for the Reliacrest Bowl between the 11th ranked Crimson Tide and the Michigan Wolverines. This one should be interesting. And Michigan is just one of these teams you just can't put your finger on them. You don't know how to label these guys. Are they going to be a dominant force, or are they just going to be a pain in the butt? I think they like to be in the pain. They like to be, the fly in the ointment. I mean, just ask Ohio State. They were able to really manipulate them. They give Indiana all they can handle. Alabama had that, lame duck game in against Oklahoma, and then they struggled a bit against Auburn. So both these teams are coming in here a little bit different aspects. So it's going to be interesting to see if Milroe can work his way around his Michigan offense, but can Warren work his way around the Alabama's defense? So it's going to be definitely a defensive game between these two, but it's low scoring. That's going to favor Michigan. But if Milroe can make those connections to find ways to get Williams the ball, or he's able to break out of the backfield, because that's one thing Michigan's going to have to try to contain. If you want, it's like, all right, we're going to stop him from running, and he's going to throw. He can throw. So it's going to be an issue no matter which way you're looking at this. Right now, Alabama has a huge favor analytically at 81%. They also have an 11.5-point spread advantage. Take Michigan for the points. I do think Michigan will make this close. I think it's going to be like a 10-point victory at the most. I don't see it going past 10. It's just the way Michigan is, and Michigan's being very undervalued in this one, and Michigan's had a slight advantage in Alabama in history in facing off in the bowl, so 3-2 overall. I mean, they took out Ohio State. Went toe-to-toe Indiana. Of course, they got blasted by Oregon, but still, that's beside the point. And Oklahoma or Alabama limped into the postseason. I'm still taking the Tide in this game, but I do not think it's going to be an 11.5. I said at the most 10, so I'll probably go 9.5 on the spread for this one. Of course, I'm recording this on the 27th, and the game is not until the 31st, so things could change in the aspect of that, but I do believe it will be Alabama winning in Raymond James Stadium. Now we head to El Paso for the Sun Bowl between the 8-4 Louisville Cardinals and the 6-6 Washington Huskies. So we're going to see if Saul and Rogers can have a very good matchup between these two. Both of them had decent seasons this year. For Saul, almost 3,200 yards in the air, 23 touchdowns, and only 6 picks. Will Rogers finding new life up in the Pacific Northwest, over 2,400 yards passing, but only 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he's getting the ball out. He's generating the yards, but he's not finding the end zone, and he's kind of a 2-1 ratio in touchdown interceptions. You can't keep doing that. It's over time, it's going to find the other team's going to come out there. Both running backs are a point, Brown and Coleman, both of them over 1,000 yards, both of them 10-plus touchdowns, with Coleman for Washington only having the 10. Brown 11. So these are two very well-balanced teams. Defensively, they've had some good matchups. I mean, if you look at the past few games, I mean, the only stumble Louisville already had was the shocker to Stanford. And if Washington plays anyone tough, they lose. So Louisville's going to be tough. Analytically, Louisville's at 75%. They have the 4.5-point spread advantage. This one I think is a little bit more feasible. I think Washington and Will Rogers will kind of make this interesting game. It's just who can limit their mistakes by throwing interceptions. But I will give it to the Cardinals to win out there in El Paso. Now I have to Orlando for the Citrus Bowl, which featured the 15th ranked South Carolina Gamecocks at 9-3, taking on the 20th ranked the Illinois Fighting Illini at also 9-3. Both of these schools have had decent seasons this year. South Carolina definitely had the joy of knocking off some big time programs. I mean, knocking off their in-state rival Clemson at the end of the year, like a cherry on top for them. Manhandling A&M. Illinois had some decent games, and then they also had some bad ones. I mean, that getting blown out by Oregon. They couldn't make that close, but they made it close against Penn State. So it's just, Sellers or Altmaier, which quarterback you can go with. Sellers for the Gamecocks over 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, 7 picks. Altmaier over 2,500 yards, 21 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So Altmaier seems to be the slightly better quarterback in that aspect. But if you're given a defense that ruffles his feathers, that's going to change things. South Carolina has that defense. Rushing-wise, Sanders, I don't know why I threw a lecture letter his name to change the pronunciation. But Sanders A little bit better in the rushing attack, over 800 yards rushing with 11 touchdowns. Lafferty for the Illini, over 600 yards, only 4 touchdowns. So the Illini's offense is almost one-dimensional, and which is going to make it difficult to establish themselves in the ways to try to alleviate the pressure off of Altmaier by having a good running attack. And that's going to hamper them a bit. The Lions' defense is good. They will give people trouble, and they have in numerous times. But recently, they've been coughing up a lot of points because they got really good offenses they went up against, and that's going to kind of spell doom for this Illini secondary and the front. Right now, analytically, it's South Carolina at 72%. They're also favored at 10.5. I'm halfway tempted to take the Illini for the points just because it's such a huge disparity in between them. I do think they will keep the score down. I don't know if it's going to be like the South Carolina Clemson game or it's going to be more like the Illinois Rutgers game. I do think it's going to be a one-score win, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to go with South Carolina to knock off the Illini. Now, time to head over to Houston, Texas, for the Texas Bowl that feature 8-4 Baylor Bears taking on the 8-4 LSU Tigers. LSU had a lot higher expectations for the postseason. A lot of people thought LSU probably make the playoffs. I have my my reasons why that's probably not going to happen, but that's because of the head coach. And I'll leave it there. Looking at this matchup, these guys are kind of probably the same thing. Robinson for the Bears, over 2,600 yards in the air, 26 touchdowns, 7 picks. I'll make sure I get his name. Nussmeier, excuse me. Just butchering names. Over 3,700 yards in the air, 26 touchdowns, 11 picks. Rushing-wise, Washington, over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns for Baylor, or Durham, almost 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. So it's definitely, and Nussmeier is a dual threat individual as well, so he will run. So you have that dueling factor going right there with LSU. Baylor recently has had some really tough games, but they've always seemed to overpower their teams, just edge them out. I mean, especially get that game against TCU in the beginning of November where they just slipped past them by 3 points. So it's definitely this is going to be a tough test for LSU in this aspect. Analytically, the Tigers, 60%. The line has it even. And they're looking at of how these teams kind of sprung themselves in here. Baylor has the momentum. They're doing pretty good. Now, LSU won their last 2 games, but it wasn't. I mean, they beat Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. But they had that stretch where they were just losing games and they just lost momentum and lost their identity and just things were just going wrong. So, looking at this aspect, I think LSU is probably a little bit more talented than Baylor, but Baylor's definitely going to make this a game. I have no quarrels about that one, but I do believe LSU would end up leaving H-Town, winners of the Texas Bowl. Now we'll end New Year's Eve with the first game of the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. We have number 6, Penn State, heading out there to Glendale, Arizona, to take on the number 3 ranked Boise, or 3rd seed Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. And this is going to be an interesting take. Can Penn State's defense stop Ginty? That is going to be the question on everyone's mind. Can Ginty dictate this game and just take Penn State out of their game? He may struggle early, but he always seems to find ways to get himself in there and really put himself on that pedestal. And if you look at Alar for Penn State, over 3,000 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and Singleton, over 900 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns. So the Penn State's defense got to try to find ways to disguise their coverages to maybe not have Alar find Warren, which is his top receiver, try stifle him enough and try and make him more one-dimensional, make him more of a running attack. Maybe they have a better shot of containing Penn State that way. And for the Broncos, Madsen, over 2,700 yards in the air, 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. This man barely makes mistakes. And that's Penn State's got to find ways in their secondary to, once again, disguise coverages, have somebody kind of watch his eyes and be able to sneak in there and get those picks as possible. And it's you see what Penn State did against SMU, a very similar style team with a dynamic player is able to get them both on the ground, on the air, and they're able to kind of disguise things and control the aspect of the game and be able to get the points up. And I think Boise State is going to have a hard time trying to find ways to break that seal of the Penn State's defense. I mean, teams have done it. Teams have made it close. But it's I think it's going to be hard for Boise State to kind of break that barrier. They've had a wonderful season. I think taking on Penn State is probably their best option, or probably their best option was taking on SMU. That would have been really, really fun to have the Fiesta Bowl. And Boise State has some history in the Fiesta Bowl. Analytically, the Lions, 65%. The spread right now is 11-point advantage for Penn State. Did they forget who they're facing? This is not going to be SMU. They're not going to steamroll them. I do believe Boise State will score more than 10 points. And when they do take on decent defenses, yeah, they do struggle. But they also find ways to win. And that's one thing that Boise State will do. They thrive under these pressure situations. This is why they're one of the premier BCS busters. Why they haven't made it to the power conferences, I don't know. But they're one of the premier BCS busters. They're looking to relive those glory days. So I will take Boise State for the points, just for that factor. But I do think Penn State will end up winning and find themselves off to the semifinals in the college football playoff. Well, now that we bring in the new year, January 1st, we'll go with the remaining of the quarterfinal matchups. We'll start off there in the ATL. In the Peach Bowl, we see the 5th seed Texas Longhorns battling the 4th seed Arizona State Sun Devils. And see if Scatterboo can scatter the Longhorns out of his way and just bruise. I mean, this man's over 1,500 yards on the ground and 19 touchdowns. That is going to be an issue for that Longhorns defense. And having Scatterboo there will kind of help alleviate some of the pressure on Leavitt to give him the opportunity to thrive. And with his over 2,600 yards in the air, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So Texas is going to have a hard game here. They'll have trying to find ways to get there. Ewers still not 100%. Arizona State's defense has an opportunity to really disrupt things. Just look what they get against Iowa State's offense. Now, I'm not comparing Iowa State offense to Texas offense. Just stop right there. But, other offensive teams like Iowa State and BYU, K-State, they were able to handle them enough to allow their offense to dictate the game. But Ewers, over 2,800 yards in the air, 26 touchdowns, 10 picks. You still have Manning could come out of the bench and off the bench and do it. I mean, you saw him against Clemson come out a few times. You should have a Weisner, 900 yards, 5 touchdowns. So there's a few elements that Texas can do. Texas also has a lot tougher defense, and that's going to be the key factor. Can the Longhorns defense stop Arizona State to a point? I don't want to say that Arizona State's similar to Clemson, but with a running back like Scadaboo, I think they have a little bit better advantage than Clemson did. So they're definitely going to be a little more advantageous to dictate the game. Clemson was able to strike blood first in that first-round matchup, but Texas has just dominated since then. But analytically, Texas, 80%. They also have a 12.5-point spread. I mean, the sheer hatred for some of these teams is just evident when it comes to these lines. Take the Sun Devils for the points. This is not going to be a 14-point spread. This is going to be close. The Sun Devils will make this close. Longhorn fans are going to get nervous. There's no question about this one. They will get nervous this game. I won't be surprised if Arizona State actually ends up winning this game, but I don't think they will. I think it will come down to a 3-point play. I think it will be a last-second field goal by Texas to win in the Peach Bowl and move on to the semifinals. Now we head to the big daddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, and we have a rematch. Ohio State will take on Oregon to see if a 1-point loss beginning of the season can translate well. And can, Ohio State continue their momentum, their win against Tennessee, which I didn't think they would. I mean, they won handily against the Volunteers. Or Oregon, being a little bit more rested, be able to repeat the performance they did earlier in Eugene, where they were able to come from behind to beat the Buckeyes. This will be an excellent matchup between these two programs. This is going to have almost a you can almost write in, possibly the winner of this game probably being the championship game. I think this is going to be that caliber of a matchup where people are going to look at this winner of this game like, this is the team you got to watch out for. I mean, Texas kind of has that going for them right now. I think Georgia too does as well. But those are the teams you really have to. I think you have to really watch out for. And for me, I kind of see Georgia a little bit better. I mean, Gabriel had a wonderful year. I mean, he was one of the Heisman finalists. Over 3,500 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 6 picks. Howard, decent year as well. Over 3,100 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So pretty much almost identical. Howard makes a little bit more mistakes. But beyond that, you look at the rushing attack, Junkins, over 800 yards, 10 touchdowns for the Buckeyes, while James, 1,200 yards plus with 15 touchdowns. Is going to be the passing accuracy of Gabriel and the running attack by James that's going to give the Ohio State defense lots of trouble once again. But Oregon's defense has to step up and stop Ohio State. They're on a momentum right now, especially with that huge win against Tennessee. And I think they're looking to possibly try to ensure Day stays. But I like Oregon in this matchup. But analytically has it Ohio State at 54%. They also have a 1-point advantage in the spread. I get that. I really do. But I like Oregon in this matchup. I really think Oregon can get in there. Of course, this is part of my who I thought would be in the final too. But I think the Ducks will be able to edge out Ohio State once again and make it to the semifinals. In the last of the quarterfinal games, we had there to New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl, where the Fighting Irish we get to take on Georgia Bulldogs. Now, Beck is out. He is done. The injuries he suffered in the SEC Championship game just sidelined him. And that could be a blessing in disguise for Georgia. I mean, that the kid that got coming off is just, someone you don't really kind of expect, a plain guy. He definitely looks like one of those Southern boys, T-shirt, pick me up truck. But he filled in nicely in relief in the SEC Championship. So definitely a individual we're going to have to watch out for. In Georgia, that's how they do it. They go next man up. So it doesn't really matter who's going to step into the role because, Stockton's just going to be that guy. He's going to just come in there and just do what he has to do by the program that's set up, and he will make it. Leonard is having a wonderful year. Stumbled at the beginning of the season, has now blossomed. Definitely a dual threat quarterback. As I say, set the record for most rushing touchdowns by quarterback in Notre Dame history. He also is shy of 2,300 yards, 17 touchdowns, 6 picks. Love, another huge factor for that Irish offense, over 1,000 yards, 16 touchdowns. But for Georgia, to help Stockton, you have Frazier, only 600 yards plus, 8 touchdowns. So the rushing attack-wise is not quite there. And Georgia does make games interesting. I mean, that's definitely putting it lightly. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Notre Dame's defense is on point right now. And can they be able to contain Georgia? And that's going to be a problem because Georgia's defense is also on point and is going to give Notre Dame some serious issues, some serious headaches. And it's proven with Notre Dame, if you rush them enough, that totally disrupts the entire game plan, and they have a hard time kind of bouncing back unless they kind of get a momentum shift. But I don't see Georgia not brushing, not pinning the ears back and just going after Leonard and Love in that backfield. Maybe one of them will squirt out and have a big gain, but that's basically about it. I do think Stockton's going to have some issues with the Irish defense because they love to pick off the ball. I mean, just ask USC. So these are definitely some issues that's going to pile up. And Notre Dame is going to put up a fight. I have no question about that one. Right now, analytically, the Irish are favored 54%. Irish also have a 1.5 advantage right now. Because all the momentum is with Notre Dame. I would love to pick the Irish. I really do. I don't see it happening. It's they're going to give Georgia everything they can handle and more. I mean, everything's going to be thrown in plus the kitchen sink. It's going to be a fight between these two. And I think the winner of this game will probably find themselves in the championship game. I think it's just like this and Oregon-Ohio State game. I think those are the two games, those are the two participants that probably will make themselves in the championship game. As much as I want to see Notre Dame win another championship, it's been too long. I think it's going to be a defensive showdown. Which defense is going to break? That's what's going to be. And I wouldn't surprise if this be a multiple overtime matchup, but I think Georgia will edge out the Irish. They get to the semifinals. All right, after all those New Year's Day games, to cleanse our palates, we head to Jacksonville for the Gator Bowl on January 2nd when you get the 9-3 Blue Devils and Duke taking on the 14th-ranked Ole Miss Rebels, also at 9-3. And we'll see these two go at it. Ole Miss had a disappointing year. They've had opportunities to get there, and then Florida happened. So right now, Ole Miss doesn't have a very wonderful feeling about being in the Sunshine State because they lost in Gainesville towards the end of November. Now they're back here again to take on Duke, who Had some letdowns around the end October, beginning of November. That could have really put them in a better pedestal position, but didn't quite happen that way. So Murphy, almost 3,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, 12 picks. Dart for the Rebels, over 3,800 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Running attack-wise, neither one of them over 1,000 yards. But Parrish for the Rebels has 10 touchdowns on the ground. But can, the Blue Devils defense disguise themselves to disrupt the passing efforts of Ole Miss? I think possibly could happen. Right now, Ole Miss is favored 83%. They have a 12-point advantage is what now spread. I would take Duke for the points because I think it will be a little bit closer than that. But I do think Ole Miss will end up redeeming themselves in the Sunshine State and winning the Gator Bowl. Now we're off to the third. We head to the First Responder Bowl out there in Gerald J. Ford Stadium on the campus of SMU in Dallas, Texas. We have a Lone Star showdown between North Texas and Texas State. You have Morris for the Mean Green, over 3,700 yards in the air, 31 touchdowns, 14 picks. McLeod for the Bobcats, almost 3,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, 12 picks. Morris slightly better in the aerial aspects. And for the balance themselves, Porter for North Texas, over 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. But Madi for the Bobcats, almost 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. So Texas State definitely has a better balanced attack to be able to go after teams and state the claims. Right now, analytically, Texas State, 71%. They also have a 9-point advantage. I think that might be the high side, but I'm not going to question this one. I am taking Texas State to win the First Responder Bowl. Then we have to Charlotte for the Duke's Mayo Bowl, which will feature 7-5 Minnesota Golden Gophers taking on the 6-6 Hokies of Virginia Tech. And this game looks like it's going to be almost identical in terms of playing style. Both these teams have had some bad games, but also put themselves in good positions to take care of individuals. I mean, Minnesota took it to Penn State. It just couldn't quite get over the hump, same way Virginia Tech took it to Duke and couldn't get over the hump. On the same weekends, Brusmer for the Gophers, over 2,600 yards, 17 touchdowns, 5 picks. Drones for the Hokies, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So quarterback-wise, not very productive in that in arena per se between these two. On the ground, Taylor for Minnesota, over 800 yards, 9 touchdowns. And Tutton for the Hokies, over 1,100 yards, 15 touchdowns, So the Hokies definitely have a better advantage on the ground, and that's where they're going to be trying to step up. And the defense is going to play a huge part in this matchup as well. Both of them have almost identical defenses. So this is going to be who's going to make the less mistakes, who's going to have those breakout plays, and who's going to commit to less penalties, which puts your team behind, and that's going to be another big factor. Analytically, it's 51% Virginia Tech. Minnesota has a 4.5-point spread. So, like I said, it's almost down the middle, but Minnesota seems to be favored a little bit better by the odds maker. I like the Gophers. I like Minnesota myself. Don't you know? And I'll take Minnesota to win in the Queen City. Then we head out to the islands of Bahamas, and we get the 8-4 Buffalo Bulls from the MAC taking on the 8-3 Liberty Flames from Conference USA. And we see Agbana. I'll probably butcher your name, and I do apologize. Over 2,200 yards, 19 touchdowns, 5 picks. Salter for the Flames. Over 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 picks. On the ground, The stampeding bull is Henderson, almost 960 yards, but only 8 touchdowns, while Cooley, over 1,200 yards on the ground and 13 touchdowns. So Liberty, definitely a little bit better balanced team and have a good rushing attack. Unfortunately, they couldn't much against Sam Houston that final week of the season, which kind of tanked their opportunities. Well, I think it's just too much of a rushing attack that the Buffalo's going to have to try to handle. And I think it's going to be a thorn in their side to try to take care of. Analytically, Liberty, 59%. They're also favored by 2 on the spread. I like the Flames as well. I'll take them to win the Bahamas Bowl. And I'm going to do a little extra. I'm just going to go ahead and go for the FCS Championship game that's going to be held on January 6th out there in Frisco, Texas. Now feature the 13-2 North Dakota State Bison. Boy, this is the team seems to be always in the championship game in the FCS. Taking on the undefeated 15-0 Montana State Bobcats. Both these schools having wonderful seasons so far. Miller for the Bison, over 3,000 yards passing, 31 touchdowns, only 4 picks. Mellett for the Bobcats, over 25 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. On the ground, another key aspect between these two. North Dakota State, Brown, 1,100 yards plus, 14 touchdowns. Humphrey for Montana State, over 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. These teams are so eerily similar. And I think the only thing I have to look to try to decipher which way I was going to go is how they handle South Dakota. North Dakota State got upset by South Dakota. Montana State manhandled them. Manhandled the Coyotes. A Bobcat was too much for a Coyote. This is going to be a good showdown between these two. With this aspect, I think Montana State is just too well balanced defensively, offensively for North Dakota State to really do much. I do think they will make this a game because they did that with South Dakota State. They battled back and forth with them. Their arch rival. So I do think it's going to be same scenario between these two. These two always seem to have good games. Right now, Montana State's favored by 3. I like those odds. I'm also going to go with Montana State winning the FCS National Championship. Well, there you go. That's Bowl Mania 3 in the books. But let me know what you think about the picks down below. I actually did 2 FCS games this time around. I don't normally touch those. See if I can make myself 2-0 for FCS. But like I said, let's mix it up in the comments below. Be kind. See what I got wrong. See what I got right. Do you like my idea of who's going to be in the Final Four for college football? And if you like what I do and you're still here, still like the ramblings I do and side missions and the incoherent ramblings that I do, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. Especially like I repeat myself multiple times in the same sentence. It means the world to me. Another thing you can do is subscribe to really help support this channel, really help get this out there to the masses. Something to do. Click that subscribe button. Click that bell icon. Turn notifications next time I post any more content on my channel. And I'll see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.